there is only war.
Greetings, nerd! We are continuing our series on the entities the Emperor might have taken from the Immaterium to create primarchs. These entities could have been ancient human archetypes, forgotten gods, or personifications of human belief that the Emperor pulled into the material world to protect them from chaos. We are going through the primarchs in numerical order, and today we have reached Ferrus Manus, the primarch of the Iron Hands. If you missed the earlier parts of the series, you can find the full playlist in the link below. Also, check out my Patreon for some cool art, and grab yourself Audible Premium membership for just 99 cents in the pinned comment. In that way, you can gain access to a massive library of Warhammer 40,000 audiobooks without actually buying them. With that said, let's begin, shall we? Ferrus Manus was not a monster, he was not a machine, he was not the cold, iron-willed tyrant that his sons would later try to sculpt him into through their wires and prayers to reason. Ferrus Manus was a man, one made greater than any other man, yes, forged by the Emperor to be a primarch, a general, a demigod of war. But he was still a man, passionate, willful, and burdened with the terrible clarity of one who sees the rot long before others smell the decay. They say his hands turned to living metal after he killed the monster on Medusa, but the truth is, Ferrus Manus was turning to metal long before that. Not in flesh, but in resolve. He believed that survival demanded strength, and strength demanded sacrifice. He looked at the galaxy and saw a universe that would not spare the weak, a reality that would not wait for those who hesitated. He hardened himself accordingly. He made of his body a weapon, of his thoughts a forge, and of his heart, well, he never truly turned it off. He only buried it beneath layers of steel. He loved his sons. That much is clear to anyone who reads the early records. Ferrus Manus taught them, guided them, crafted with them. His legion, the Iron Hands, were not always the stoic cult of cybernetic penitents they would become. They were once warriors who believed that perfection could be earned, not just installed. Ferrus pushed them to their limits, not out of cruelty, but out of belief, fierce, uncompromising belief that they could rise. He saw in them the future of the Imperium, of humanity itself. Strong, enduring, capable of building wonders that would outlast even the stars. But he was too harsh, too absolute. The galaxy does not permit subtlety in war, and he made war his art. In the heat of conquest, his lessons became commands, his expectations became laws, and his humanity, quiet, tired, buried, was mistaken for weakness. His sons watched their father mold himself into iron and thought that means flesh was failure. They forgot, or never truly saw, that Ferrus Manus loved creation, that he valued the effort of the craftsman as much as the blade itself. They saw only the hammer, not the hand that shaped it, and so the Iron Hands broke. When the heresy came, it was not simply treachery that shattered Ferrus, it was betrayal of the deepest kind from someone he loved, Fulgrim. They had been closer than most brothers, bound not just by blood and war, but by the forge. They had made weapons together, argued about beauty and function, and found, for a time, something like kinship in their shared artistry. But Ferrus had always believed that the will to build must be pure, that art without purpose, without discipline, was corruption. When Fulgrim fell, Ferrus saw it not as a choice, but as a sickness, and he went to cure it with steel and fire. He died on Istvan, his head struck from his shoulders by the very brother who had once shared his forge. Some say he saw it coming. Others claim he refused to believe Fulgrim would go through with it, that even then he hoped. I think he died as he lived, stubborn, defiant, believing that if he just struck hard enough, spoke loudly enough, demanded fiercely enough, the galaxy would bend back into sense, but it didn't. It never does. His sons never recovered. In their grief and shame, they took his lessons and turned them into chains. They ripped the flesh from their bodies, bolted purity into their minds, and whispered half-remembered creed, "The flesh is weak." They made that their truth, their gospel, but they forgot the rest. Vulcan remembered. Vulcan, who fought beside Ferrus, who laughed with him, who mourned him. Vulcan once said in response to Ferrus's jest that his arm was tired from killing so many orcs, "The flesh is weak, but deeds endure." That was the truth Ferrus lived. Not that flesh is weakness to be discarded, but that flesh is transient, and thus we must leave behind something worthy, a legacy, a creation, an act of meaning. Ferrus Manus died with a hammer in hand, not because he hated, but because he believed. And his tragedy is not that he was made of iron, but that his sons thought that meant he had no heart. But he did. It simply beat in rhythm with the forge. It's strange, isn't it? How the echoes of the old gods linger. How in the faces of the primarchs, in their actions and their fates, you can almost hear the mythologies of ancient Terra whispering through the warp. The Emperor claimed to have no use for gods, yet his great work, the Primarch Project, was steeped in symbols older than empires. And when we look again, not with dogma but with open eyes, we begin to see those echoes take shape. We begin to understand. We once wondered whether Perturabo was drawn from the image of Hephaestus, the forge god, the divine craftsman. That made sense for a time. Perturabo built engines of war, knew the language of machines, and turned cold steel into empire. But now, in retrospect, that feels like a misstep. Perturabo was not Hephaestus. He was something darker, something colder. He was Hashud, the god of tyranny and bitter fire, the god who demanded obedience and offers only domination in return. But Ferrus Manus? Ferrus bears Hephaestus' mark so deeply it cuts through time. He is the forge incarnate, not as a tool of punishment, but as a crucible of creation. Like Hephaestus, Ferrus was not beautiful in the conventional sense. He was not radiant like Sanguinius or silver-tongued like Fulgrim. He was raw, scarred, elemental, a creature of hammer and anvil. Hephaestus was cast from Olympus for his imperfections, his lameness, for not meeting the gods' standards of divine beauty. Ferrus, likewise, was often cast aside by his brothers for his unyielding harshness, his lack of tact, his refusal to pretend that war was anything but brutal, ugly work. Both were makers, not merely users of tools, but inventors of them. Creators of wonders that others would wield and never fully understand. Hephaestus forged the weapons of the gods, Zeus's thunderbolts, Achilles' armor, the chains that bound Prometheus. Ferrus Manus crafted tools of war, yes, but also of peace, of progress. He made machines that advanced civilization, shaped Medusa's fractured clans into something greater. His sons inherited not just his discipline, but his reverence for craft, though they twisted it into something cold and blind. There is a shared tragedy, too, in both figures. Hephaestus was betrayed by those closest to him, Hera, who threw him from the heavens, Aphrodite, who took pleasure elsewhere. Ferrus was betrayed by Fulgrim, his brother and once his dearest friend. He trusted him, and both were broken by it. The Forge God and the Iron Hand, each left alone to burn. But the deepest connection lies in their purpose. Hephaestus, despite his pain, never stopped building. He never stopped shaping the world. He was the only god who worked. While others waged war or played politics, Hephaestus toiled. So too did Ferrus Manus. He saw in labor not just necessity, but virtue. Strength was not about domination, it was about the will to shape reality, to endure the fire and emerge stronger, to build something that lasts. That, perhaps, is why the Emperor, when crafting Ferrus, may have reached into the warp and drawn upon that ancient echo, not a god in name, but an archetype embedded deep within human myth, a memory so old it had passed into story. The Emperor, whether he admitted it or not, was not above using the warp's patterns to his advantage. He knew what would resonate, what would endure. Ferrus was never meant to be worshipped, but he was designed to embody an idea that the Forge redeems, that creation is sacred, that strength must be earned through trial. And just like Hephaestus, Ferrus was cast aside. He died at Istvan V, not in glory, not in triumph, but in silence and betrayal. And yet, what he made, the legacy he forged, endures. His name, like the old gods, is remembered not for beauty or victory, but for what was built. His sons misunderstood him. They turned his lessons into punishment. They thought the metal of his hands was a symbol of purity, of rejection of flesh, but it was never about rejection. It was about transformation. The Forge does not destroy, it refines. The flesh is weak, yes, but in that weakness is the opportunity to transcend, not by cutting it away, but by mastering it. Hephaestus, the god who labored. Ferrus Manus, the primarch who believed. The emperor may have drawn from the same well when crafting him. And the tragedy is, as always, not that the fire consumed them, but that no one remembered what they were trying to make. There is another shadow that lingers behind the forge fire glare of Ferrus Manus, another myth, another echo, and when you look beyond the Olympian flame, when you sink deeper into the mythic bones of old Terra, you find him, Wayland the Smith. Wayland isn't a god, not in the strictest sense. He doesn't sit among celestial thrones or cast bolts of lightning from stormy heights. He is mortal, human, and that makes him all the more compelling, all the more tragic, because like Ferrus Manus, Wayland was not born to rule. He was born to create, to build, and in both of them we see the raw, blistering hands of genius and suffering bound tightly together. The Emperor may have drawn more than one echo from the warp when shaping the primarchs. It is not a contradiction to say that both Hephaestus and Wayland live on in Ferrus, because where Hephaestus embodies divine labor, Wayland embodies mortal pain. He is the myth of the betrayed creator, the smith whose brilliance becomes a curse, and in that tale, Ferrus Manus walks almost step for step. Wayland was captured, crippled, and enslaved by an ungrateful king. His legs were maimed to keep him bound, his genius confined to forge wonders for a man who envied and feared him. And though he complied, he never forgave. His heart burned not with rage, but with resolve. He made weapons, gifts, marvels, but he also made escape, revenge, and legend. Ferrus Manus, too, was bound, not by chains, but by duty, by belief, by the dream of the Imperium. He gave his loyalty freely, his genius willingly, and for that, he was used. Pushed to the edge of exhaustion, never praised, only expected, he was the Primarch who did not ask for accolades. He simply worked. And like Wayland, he was betrayed, not by kings, but by kin. Fulgrim, his brother, his friend, his mirror in art and in ruin. There's something uncanny in how both of them poured their soul into metal. Wayland forged blades of such power they passed into legend. Rings, armors, runes, all of them carried whispers of sorrow, vengeance, and freedom. Ferrus, too, poured meaning into the forge. His tools were never just weapons, they were ideals, manifest symbols of what he wanted humanity to become. Resilient, sharp, beautiful through struggle, and when their chains were broken, neither walked away whole. Wayland escaped, yes, but he left behind a trail of blood and a hollow heart. Ferrus never escaped. He stood on Istvan V and gave everything in one final, desperate strike at betrayal. And in both cases, their legend only truly began at the moment of their undoing. And like Wayland, Ferrus's legacy was misread. The Iron Hands saw only the chains. They believed strength meant never again being weak, never again trusting, never again bleeding. But Wayland's story is not about refusing pain, it's about what you do with it, about how you transmute suffering into something that cannot be caged. Ferrus Manus, for all his grim resolve, never wanted his sons to become statues of steel. He wanted them to endure, to build, to remember. Wayland forged his story in spite of captivity. Ferrus forged his in spite of war. Neither wanted to destroy the world, they wanted to shape it, and both were punished for that ambition. But what do you think? I personally believe Hephaestus does fit better to Ferrus than to Perturabo. Also, did you know about the other half of that line? The flesh is weak, but deeds endure. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like, subscribe, and use the brand new hype feature to help the channel grow. That is the best way you can support my content without spending a dime. And trust me when I say this, it will help massively. On your way out, grab the 30 days Audible trial to listen to Warhammer audiobooks for free. Check out Patreon for some cool art, and as always, join Discord for a friendly banter. With that said, this is the end of the briefing.